Hello, everyone. This is next episode of Enter the Matrix. Previously, we were going through 5-man pairings. This time, we're going through 8-man pairings because we just came back from Netherlands Amersfoort Eurotrash Cup, which is abbreviated to ETC. 8-man tournament
I
that
get the
all of
joke.
we, all of us actually took part in, and with me, I have Mitch. You guys might know him from the last episode, and
Hi.
also Thierry. Maybe as Mitch, kind of you're a staple by this point. Like what? It's your third episode. I think Thierry, you can do a short
Yep.
introduction about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the co-captain of Team Luxembourg. I'll excuse myself for all the coughs that will slip through because I have a nasty cough since a week. Sorry for that. I've been doing the pairings for most of it with another team member, and I captained this team to the ETC and did the pairings for our team there.
So, thanks for coming on, guys.
My
This
pleasure, absolutely.
this episode, I had an idea of, instead of only showing like the part of top teams and how they perform, like was last time, basically three very well performing teams and ITT. This time I wanted to go into more of a talk where we can also show how different approach can it be for a newer team like Luxembourg, or a team which has lesser amount of players available to them, so they are limited by their army choices, team choices, composition. So what I want to touch upon in this show is actually not only how we did the pairings, but also what were our preparation before the event. So if there's a new person coming in and listening, they can also understand what are the struggles. Or if, for example, they want to go to next year's event, they can just grab a bunch of friends and learn from our approach and have something tangible to actually follow. So having that in mind, maybe it's worth to give a short introduction of the format that we are playing. So WTC format is 8-man teams, so none of the armies could be fielded twice. And by armies, we mean codices. So this means that, for example, you cannot have Eldari and Harlequins in the same team compositions. And also, only one kind of Marines can be fielded, except Grey Knights, which have different codex. So all of this forces some constraints on your team composition and also requires you to make some choices, especially in a meta game like this one we have now, where you clearly have Marines at the top of the meta, but only one of those armies can be Marines in your team. And furthermore, at ITT, you only had the same kind of table available for every player, but here we are playing WTC tables, which vary wildly between each other. And on one table, certain matchup might be drawish or losing, or another it might be a huge win. So, for example, close combat army going on a dense table has way more good pairings compared to playing on a lighter table. So this can kind of is the difference that you usually see, for example, between what you see as well-performing armies in UKTC, which is a little bit more shooty terrains, and, for example, GW terrain. So if you account for that, you can say that some of the tables are closer to UKTC, some of them are closer to GW terrain when it comes to how they play and which armies excel on those tables. Maybe you guys want to add something in?
No, that sounds right. I mean, basically, you can almost think of the show we did for ITT with David and Pumba as like the intro to pairings. And this is like advanced pairings, where now you've got 8 instead of 5. You have a champion we didn't have, and you've got tables. So this is like the full complexity version instead of the intro version. So welcome to round 2. Strap in, boys and girls. And if you can, definitely watch this in video format, because there's going to be a lot of color. we're going to be talking to.
Yeah. So let's, without further ado, because if you want to go through 2 whole 8v8 pairings and the team composition, etc., it will take some time. Maybe Mitch, you want to go through the pairing you've done against us and also give us some intel into how you guys prepared. How did you choose your armies? What were your limitations, or what were your thoughts behind your team comp?
Yeah, that sounds great. You want me to go first because I'm going to run my side of the pairings first, Typhus?
Yep. Yeah,
Cool.
and then
So
I'll go.
What I've got up here is what looks like our matrix. So let me clean that up. That's ugly looking. Cool. So I'll start with our team. Yeah, I'll start with our team. Iceland brought, of course, 8 players. We brought Iron Hands. We brought Chaos Demons. This is not the Chizink Demons list that we're seeing a lot of. This is a Slaanesh Demons list, which its pilot Hathar got 2nd in the ITC with last season. It has a lot of reps, so we took his Demons list. We took Chaos Knights. We took Sisters. Woo, Sisters. I was the only Sisters players there, but I do not regret the choice. Feel free to criticize or judge me for that later, Typhus and Thierry, based on what you saw. We brought Guard, shock. We brought World Eaters, shock. Grey Knights, and Death Guard. So that was our list. I would say if you look at these, 4 of them are very no-brainers. Iron Hands, Chaos Knights, Guard, and World Eaters. I think I saw most of those in almost every single opposing list that we ran into. I think our more interesting ones are Chaos Demons. I think people underestimate the Slaanesh Chaos Demons list. I think it is brutal. Whereas the Chizink Demons list is more of an anti-shooting tech piece. This is more of a just go kill you piece. I should also mention that Hathar is one of our best players on the team. So Hathar was given the role of go kill people and go score. And this is a much better list for go kill people, go score in that player's hands. So Hathar's bringing his demons. Sisters is another interesting one. I firmly believe Sisters have a role to play in teams. I am proving it 1 game at a time. But I'm also a Sisters faction specialist, so I know what I'm doing. I know how to pilot the army, and I brought this crazy 30 Valorous Heart Sacrifices list, which gave a lot of people fits. So that explains those 2. Grey Knights is an experiment. The Iceland Grey Knights player has a ton of reps as Grey Knights, so the idea was to see, are Grey Knights good in teams in this meta right now? If yes, let's rely on his insane reps with the faction. If not, we will learn things. I think overall, not unhappy with Grey Knights, but undecided how that went. So call that an experiment. And Death Guard was probably our weakest faction by a fair margin. For context, of the 8 players we sent, 7 of them are on the WTC team. The 8th could not make it to this scrimmage. So we had one of the aspirants for the WTC team step in to play the role. I am super happy with Sigga's performance, the player who played it. He absolutely gave his all. He'd never been on this level of competition before. He did not score super high, but no one ever does the first time they go to a big event. And we decided to give him a faction he was very, very, very comfortable with, rather than saying, here, player who's not used to the level of play, here's a faction you get 3 reps with and then go play at the big event. We thought that would have been a worse experience for him and probably a worse experience for the team. So we took a weaker faction, and I think it was a weaker faction in pairings, but we took it to give Siggy more of a baseline confidence. So when he went into this event, he would give the best version of himself. So the Death Guard player was 100% a concession to that player, who was awesome and did his absolute best and helped get estate people from the team. So no regrets there, but that would explain Death Guard. I would not take them again if I had the chance to, and I could make another faction work. But that was all right. What do you guys think?
Absolutely agree. I mean, often you have kind of a meta call on which armies you take. We had the same.
Yep.
Like, we were the only ones running 2 full knights, and versus some armies, some teams, it made the pairing easier. Against others, it made it harder. So it depends. I'm happy to see when it comes to the pairings we did against you guys, to see what reaction you had to the double knight. But the same goes for a lot of armies. Like, we saw when you see an army like Death Guard in a team, you're like, what are they trying? What is the idea behind it? Someone get me someone who knows the army to figure out why they use this, and what don't we understand? What don't we see? And that might throw the pairing
Gotcha.
off, for me at least.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think this event was kind of interesting in a sense that there were like 4 clear-cut armies which were auto-includes. And
Yes.
then it was up to debate what is the remaining 4. And I think the teams that podiumed had kind of similar approach. But it's still, I think it's not solved, and I don't think it's solvable.
Honestly, Typhus, in this meta, I think there's probably 5. I think GSC was on almost every opponent's roster that we saw. Every time we played against it, it was scary. Every time it was scary to pair into, not just Poland's GSC player who may be like a savant at the faction, but like it was consistently one we had to be really dicey around. And I would probably run GSC, and then maybe we debate the last 3 for sure.
Yeah. Okay, maybe let's then get into the pairing itself. Maybe how you wanted to approach it, seeing the metrics. What was your way to do it? Like from the very beginning, like you approached the pairing table, you probably have something in your mind. What was it?
Yeah, so to start this out, it was going to be 5 rounds. There's only 8 teams at this event. There are only like 17 unique armies across those 64 players. Give you a sense of how much the meta has already kind of started to homogenize in terms of team thinking. So what we did as a team was we basically, I don't know the mission, I don't know the map, give me an estimate. As we did for ITT, I brought that same thing over to Team Iceland because I ran pairing for both. You have a double loss, keep me the heck away from this. A single loss, I would prefer not to play this. Double loss, we called no more than 5 points. Single loss, we called expected 4 to 11 points. A draw, which we expect to be 8 to 12. A low win, a single win, which is like 11 to 15. And a big win, which was like a guaranteed 14 plus points, is kind of how we thought about it. We also had a single flip, which is like a 6 to a 14, depending on first turn. And then a double flip, which is a straight up 0-20. This game could go absolutely anywhere, and it's impossible to guess. And those were kind of our 7. And then for each round, we threw in the 8 people we had. We copied in the baseline pairings, and then we went and refined and tweaked based on what the mission was, based on what the list was, based on potentially what the pilot was. So that's kind of how we did it. Once we ran through that process, which we knew Poland was going to be our first round because Poland was our first round. So we pre-did this from way in advance. This is kind of the matrix that we ended up with. And like I said on the last show, once you have a matrix in hand, you kind of just have to trust it. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's imperfect. But by the point you start actually pairing the other team, you kind of have to throw that away and say, I trust the data in front of me, or else I should have fixed it before. So this is kind of what we thought we had going into Poland.
I will
our colors.
Interrupt here to give additional input.
Yeah.
What Mitch said about setting a table and matrix at one point and just following through. That's what we also do, that we have only 3 guys talking about pairings and we do not care what others say, because whenever you start pairing, suddenly those greens become oranges, etc., because people start getting scared. So yeah, like estimations are holy, and what you put there, you need to deliver. And that's what's the most important, because captain does his job according to those estimations.
Yes, absolutely right.
I think that's one of the hardest things to do to get it right. Like the minutiae of several armies, because sometimes like a miniature changes and it tanks the matchup, and the player might not realize it, and then all goes into chaos. When it goes like after the game,
yes.
Oh, I didn't know they could do that in that situation, because you never see that in singles.
Yep. at WTC last year, our Heather, our team captain, was playing Tyranids, and we paired him into Death Guard. And he'd played Death Guard before in singles plenty of times, absolutely eaten them alive, no problem. Not realizing this was a Ferryman Death Guard list, which I think extends the aura of the fight last no charge bubble or something like that. He was playing Kraken at the time when Kraken was good. So he literally couldn't do what his army did. Because if Kraken went in, they would fight last, they get punched off the table, and he had no play whatsoever. And poor Hathar was expecting like a big win, and he got like 4 points or something terrible. Just because you're right, he didn't understand that one interaction, that one model for that one, at the time, weirdo like sub faction. So it's tough. It's tough.
Anyway, so now as you had the table and you knew what you wanted to do, what were your next steps?
Yeah. Is it worth, Typhus, briefly talking through how pairings and eights work, or do we want to assume that's a given
Sure.
audience and move forward?
Go through.
Okay. Sure. So here's how pairings and eights works. I will do my best to explain it briefly. I have a little thing over here, so I'll tell you use that as well. If I'm looking to the right, I'm looking at the screen doing the share. That's why I'm not looking at the camera. So basically, this pairings runs in 3 rounds. You're going to submit a first defender, a second defender, and a third defender. The first 2 are just the same. You submit a defender, i.e., the guy you want to get punched. Then your opponent selects 2 attackers, i.e., the 2 people who will punch that defender. You pick which attacker you want to punch you, i.e., which of those 2 attackers you want. That creates a match between your defender and their attacker. The attacker you refuse goes back into their pool to be potentially reused later. And the same thing happens both sides simultaneously. So after the first round, 2 defenders, 2 attackers, 2 are set. Then you do exactly the same thing again with no change. So the second time you run it, there will be 4 tables done, 2 defenders on each side, 2 attackers on each side. I should mention here that defenders always pick table, which means that the defender also gets, even though the defender doesn't get to pick much about who's going to punch him, right? The attacker gets to pick between 7 armies to punch. The defender only picks 2 that were offered to take the punch. The defender gets to pick the table. And like Typhus said, table can be enormous in a matchup. So one interesting thing about a defender is having the table or being table sensitive can sometimes make for a better defender, which wasn't a thing in ITT. And then finally, for the third round, things get crazy. So as before, you will pick a defender. You will pick on each side and attackers on each side. But once you refuse, but then things get a little different. So immediately, once you pick your 2 attackers, now your defender, you had 4 armies to start because only 4 were committed up to the start of the third one. Your defender and 2 attackers is 3. That last player immediately becomes your champion, who plays your opponent's champion. So by picking defenders and attackers, you also automatically pick the 8th round, who's the one no one picked. And then also the refused attackers in the third pairing will go into each other as well. That might sound confusing. It'll be even more confusing, but hopefully clarifying when we walk through it. But basically, you're going to pick defender or attacker. Refused attackers is table 7, is the 7th pairing. And the guys that no one picked is the 8th pairing. And if you're not really careful about all 4 of those, you might just lose the round. So that's where most of the thinking has to really happen, is that like last 4 effectively.
And worth noting is when Mitch said that you have attackers, defenders, both teams simultaneously revealed their defenders and then simultaneously revealed their attackers and simultaneously reveal who was chosen as the attacker from those 2. So all of this, you basically do it in a blind, assuming that opponent will do something.
Yes. Which is the fun part. Okay, so let's talk through the logic here. I am Iceland's pairings person going into Poland. Here's our matrix. Again, strategy, step back a bit. Our goal is to identify the opposing team's killers, the ones who are viable threats to go 20-0 or high scoring, and neutralize them. Our second goal is to get our killers, or often called sword lists or attacker lists, get our killers into good matchups where they can go get 20s, and everyone else hold roughly to a draw. Ideally, we want wins, not draws, or draws, not losses, but kind of hold even. And if you look at our roster, we have 2 clear killers. We've got demons and we've got iron hands. Guard can also be a killer situationally. And if you look at armies like Grey Knights, they can also given the right matchup, be a killer. But Grey Knights are more of like a midfielder, really, if I'm going to start using off-sport comparisons. But basically, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a really good match for Iron Hands and our Demons. It also so happens those are our two strongest players. They are both top 100 in the world players last year for ITC. So they are the most likely to be able to press advantage big. So that's like kind of the rough idea. And if we look at this matchup right away, well, Iron Hands have a double green into Chaos Knights and a green into World Leaders, Guard, and Custodes, which means our Iron Hands have a lot of potential to go get a kill. Our Demons player, very confident in these pairings, thinks he's going to score a win into every matchup except for Guard. We can debate if that's true or not, but that gives me a lot of flexibility in pairing for where the Demons are going to go. And everyone else is kind of somewhere in the middle. The other thing I would note here, which is interesting, is that Guard has a couple of good wins. If Guard gets into Custodes, they're going to clean up big. But Guard also only has one losing matchup early. And we know Guard is very table sensitive because, of course, Guard want a table where they can hide their tanks and shoot the guys off objectives. And then finally, Sisters here, my beautiful Sisters. I believe I only have one losing pairing into Poland's GSC player. And otherwise, it's all draws or small wins, which makes for another interesting defender option because I can throw out Sisters. They're going to throw GSC at me. I played Meissen. He's destroyed me before, but they'll throw someone else too, which kind of lets me pick the other one and come out of my first defender without getting completely crunched, in theory. I don't know if we've said this, but Poland's bringing Gene Stealer Cult, which is what I said I would bring. They're bringing Dark Angels. You guys had like the 35 Terminator list, right? Typhus, you went all in on that?
We had 40. You do not remember our pairing cards?
Yeah, leave your brain at home. Replace it with Thunderhammer Storm Shields. You guys had Elves. You guys had Demons, the Chizink list, which is becoming more popular. It's like all Flamers and Screamers and Chariots. You guys had the Chaos Knights list with 1,000,000 War Dogs. You guys had World Eaters. You guys had Guard just like we did. And you guys had Custodes. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I've got two really good defenders to start with. Because again, you don't pick someone who has many losses. Because you put them up as a defender, they will give you 2 losses. And then you will lose the round. So our Death Guard have 4 negative matchups. Our Grey Knights have 3 negative matchups. Our Chaos Knights have 2 negative matchups. Our Demons only have 1 negative matchup, but he's a killer. You don't throw Demons up as a defender. They're very table agnostic, and I want him to murder somebody. So we're not going to throw Demons up, which means there are only 2 viable defenders for first defender in this grid, are Sisters and Guard. They have 1 bad matchup. They're both fairly table sensitive, and they'll both do okay. Now, when we talked about this, my first inclination was Guard. And a lot of the time at this event, people took Guard for their first defender. Pick an open table, shooting gallery, even if it's a draw, it's fine. Yeah, right, Thierry? I think we did it against you, actually. We'll find out soon.
We picked Guard. Like we had a bit of another approach. We looked at what most of the situation will get. We had a Tau player. And Tau was not the best choice, but we had to take him because our Votan player had to cancel. So we used the Tau also as a defender because he had basically just bad matchups to get something out of the system. We didn't use him as first, but we used him as second. And so we had like a different from what you explained now. We had a basic idea that we would use the same 3 attackers most of the time.
Yeah, but we'll get to that when we'll talk about your pairing.
Yeah. So we almost took Guard, but the other thing you have to consider is if you take Guard, what good matchups go off the matrix that you might otherwise want to keep? And in this particular example, there's one really interesting matchup, which is Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights is very susceptible to Guard and Iron Hands because get this, they just get shot and then they die. And if we turn over our Guard, it means that Chaos Knights are now only afraid of our Iron Hands and Demons matchup. And at the rest of our grid, there's a bunch of draws and losses into Chaos Knights. So if we put up Guard now, Chaos Knights gets free reign. And Chaos Knights is also a great second, third defender list because they also don't have a ton of bad matchups and sometimes they run people over. We didn't want to give them that for free. So instead, we chose Sisters for our first defender. I know they're going to throw GSC at me. They're going to throw something else. I'm going to pick the something else. And I think I'm going to get out of it okay. And so that's what we do. We pick Sisters for our first defender. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in right there. At the same time, we find out the evil Polish choose their elves for their first defender. And now we've got that first little bit of information done. By the way, I should note, we were like using actual models. Like I was putting models up to represent our models during pairing, which I thought was cute. Poland brought out 8 bottles of vodka that look just like this, with little stickies on them saying the 8 armies, and they put out the bottle of vodka. And the rule was if you beat the opponent, you got to keep it. And that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. You guys are amazing. It was incredible.
I hope this holds for future events. I hope we started new tradition.
Yeah, for all of friendships, I agree. And for my liver, I hope not. But that's okay. So now we got to pick our attackers. So sisters are off now. They're off in Defenderland. They send out the elves. All right. So what do we like in the elves? Well, let's take a look at this matrix. We're not going to throw Iron Hands at elves. That's a draw. Iron Hands a killer. We like demons into our elves. In fact, our demons player thinks he eats elves for breakfast. So that's a good candidate potentially. We like Chaos Knights into elves because Chaos Knights are pretty hard to kill. They just go stompy, stompy, stomp. So we liked Chaos Knights into elves. A bunch of stuff which is a draw into elves, including our sisters, guard, world leaders, and Grey Knights. So the easy thing to do would be, I'll take demons and Chaos Knights. Those are my 2 winning matches into elves. I've done my pairings. I'm complete. But here's the thing. Demons have a ton of good matchups. If I throw away demons early, they'll probably take them because if they're scared of demons the way that I'm excited about demons, it takes away a ton of flexibility later in the pairings and it takes a bunch of green off my matrix. So I'll give them Chaos Knights because Chaos Knights has some losses. And if I can get Chaos Knights off the table, Guard is still around, Dark Hand is still around. I don't want my Chaos Knights into that. So I'll throw up Chaos Knights. And interestingly, we also choose to throw up Grey Knights for our second attacker. If you look at our matrix, Grey Knights has 2 losses and a double loss and a coin flip. It is terrible in this grid. So if we can dump it off and take the draw, that is very much okay with us because we can just clean some red off of our pairings grid. And so that's what we do. We throw up Grey Knights and Chaos Knights for attackers. And we find out at the same time, Poland throws out Shock, Gene Stealer Cult, and World Eaters. They did exactly what we thought in sending stuff out at us. Now, when we talk this through, this one's really easy. I am concerned that Sisters gets absolutely smoked by Gene Stealer Cult. We don't want to hand that pairings over. Their Gene Stealer Cult player is one of the best players in the world, Myson. If we give Myson a shot at a 20, he has a real go at it, and we don't want to give that man a 20. So we're just not going to worry about it. We knew GSU was coming. We're going to take the other one. We take World Eaters. Done and done. And we find out that they took our Grey Knights. And I am ecstatic they took my Grey Knights because now all that crap is off my roster. So now if we go update it, look at all this beautiful, beautiful yellow and red that's now off my balance sheet. And you can see here that my sisters are going into their World Eaters. Give me a nice little draw. I hope. We move on from there. Cool. Typhus, Thierry, what did I do wrong so far? Feeling good? Feeling bad?
I mean, I know what you did wrong, but like,
but not based on the matrix, based on how my matrix is wrong, right?
I think actually I wouldn't have thrown Grey Knights. I would have banked on throwing probably something else there, maybe like Death Guard, or I think even Guard on their. No. I think like it's a good choice, but I think this was a chance to get a score, and I would have taken it. But it's a benefit of hindsight of me knowing that I don't think demons are as good as you value them.
Into everything or into elves specifically?
Oh, more matchups.
Yeah, fair enough. Haydar's a very good player, but he's also a very confident player. And so one of the off pairings conversations I sometimes have with Haydar is like, come on, man, are these all really wins? Talk to me. And I try to validate that. But again, we're past that point. The matrix is truth, right? Yeah.
But like according to the matrix, I like your reasoning.
Yeah. And honestly, I was ecstatic to get Grey Knights off the list. Like when you picked that, I was like, yes, let's go. Like that's all out. Because we were terrified we were going to give Ale, our Grey Knights player, a terrible matchup. And he's not a bad player. But Grey Knight is matchup dependent because sometimes they just don't have the tools because they have a bunch of strength 6 shooting. They don't have really like strength 8 anywhere in the list.
I agree with it too. That would have been my reasoning behind it too. Like you give a choice which in your eyes is hopefully not a choice. So you get one of the armies taken away and then be in a better situation. Also for the defender, I would have done the same.
Yeah,
and I think of the 3 of us, I have the least experience in the pairing, so I don't see no mistake.
I mean, I'm still learning here. I'm listening to every word Typhus tells me, and I'm going to take it going forward. I think it's really interesting too. You want to just go for, like, there is a reason to just go for the win for your first defender. They give you the wrong thing, just go kill him. You do need to score points, right? At some point. My main concern, Typhus, is I see a lot of red and double red still in my grid, and I just like wanted to try to erase as much of that as possible.
I think it's hard to recognize at which point in pairings you should be going for those wins early, because it's usually a trade-off for a later one. And from my experience doing pairings for WTC plenty of times, I think both approaches are actually valid if you follow through. You'll recognize that both ways actually will work out kind of similarly. One of them is safer though. And that's the one that all of us do.
I'm a very defensive-minded player, and so I think I pair defensively as well, which is interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so now second defender.
I'm the same. Going like try to get it neutral and then spike out in the end.
Yeah. So now we're on second defender. I talked about how sisters are a good defender, right? Or rather, how guard is a good defender, right? Well, guard still feels like a pretty good defender. Now, yeah, maybe we have to worry about Chaos Knights, but at a certain point, we have to pick a defender. We can't pick Chaos Knights. They have bad matchup in Dark Angels and guard. We will just like hand them a big score for Chaos Knights. We don't want to hand them Iron Hands a defender because Iron Hands is one of our big killer lists. They'll just like throw something in and get a draw, and that makes me sad because I need Yoka, my Iron Hands player, to perform. Demons, again, I could throw up Demons as a defender, but they don't really care about the table, so I'm wasting the utility table pick. Oh, I haven't picked tables yet. It doesn't really matter, but for the purpose of this conversation, but I picked table 4, they picked table 2. I picked a nice table for me, and they picked a nice table for them, basically. But we both could hide. So guard now is interesting. Only one bad matchup. We also, a fun fact about our guard player, he used to be a Dark Angels player for like a year. So if they throw Dark Angels at us, he will know exactly what they are going to do. So he's actually like going to overperform into Dark Angels. We also expect that if they throw guard in, if we throw down guard, they will throw as demons because that is their anti-guard tech piece. And they will throw in Dark Angels because that's a classic list that blanks guard without any difficulty. But because we think we have the guard Dark Angels advantage, feels like a pretty good defender. World Eaters still have some losses, too many losses. World Eaters could be good later. Our World Eaters player is also great. He can sometimes go kill people. So handing him a loss this early on feels wrong. And Death Guard, again, is just not going to perform. So we actually do pick guard this time. Only one bad matchup. We think they're going to give us Iron. We think they're going to give us Dark Angels, and we think we'll be just okay. So guard goes down for a second defender. And then we find out that they send at us Custodes. There it is. So, all right. We now have a conversation about what we want to send to Custodes. We love Custodes. We think we've got tons of wins Custodes. Our Iron Hand loves it. Our Demons loves it. Our Chaos Knights loves it. Our Guard loves it, but they're out now. World Eaters are like a draw into it, and we think our Death Guard love it too. So easy pickings here. Now is the time to deploy. So here's what we want to do. This is our only good pairing for Death Guard we've got in the whole friggin' matrix. Death Guard's going into this pairing. It's not a conversation. We're going to send up Death Guard. The only thing is, what else can we send? And our strategy for this was, let's send the gnarliest thing they're the most scared of. So instead, they pick Death Guard. But even if they pick the other thing, we won't be unhappy. So as an attempt to force them to take Death Guard instead, the gnarliest thing we have on our roster is Iron Hands. So we're going to send Iron Hands and Death Guard into them and see if we can get them to take a bunch of crap off of my my pairings grid. And we find out from guard. You remember what you guys took? It was demons, and it's Dark Angels. Yeah. You'll be shocked to hear they did exactly the correct play, or what I believe was the correct play into us. Cool. So we'll finish this one out. Well, I told you what was going to happen. I told you they're going to send us demons and Dark Angels, and then our guard player has like tons of reps as Dark Angel. I think he like top 4 to UKTC Super Major with Dark Angels once. So yeah, we're going to take those Dark Angels. Thank you very much. And sadly, they do not rise to the bait. The damn Polish team, who apparently are good at this thing called Warhammer, choose the Iron Hands and Custodes instead of taking our Death Guard for us. So Typhus, I'm sad about that. I'm sad about it. But you're not, I don't think.
No. I think I'm fine.
Fine. Yeah. So there we go. We've got some more stuff taken off here. We're feeling okay here. From my grid, I've got 3 draws and a win. So, it's a good start to pairings. What do you guys think so far? Happy? Sad? What did you do wrong this time, Typhus?
I mean, looking just from your table, I would have surely not sent Iron Hands and sent something else.
Yeah, what would you have done instead?
I need to look into your estimation, because I think maybe into this matchup I would have actually sent at this point Chaos Knights.
We did like our yeah.
Because their pairings weren't looking very good at that point.
Yeah.
They had lost into Dark Angels, lost into Guard, draws into Demons and Chaos Knights. Like those armies that were available, you didn't have all great matchups into. So I would probably drop Chaos Knights as the second attacker, because I've played this matchup myself, and I think it's actually a win for Chaos Knights if played well.
Yeah, because the Custodes don't do that much damage into T7, 12, 14 wounds, or whatever it is. Yeah, in hindsight, I think you're right. Our ploy was to try to get you to take Death Guard by not taking the Iron Hands, because you know that Yokut's a great player, but you didn't take the bait. You're like, yeah, we'll take a small.
We don't care about the names. We don't care about the names. We look at the table.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. And you know what? You were right. Without getting into what actually happened, we did not go get a 20 in that matchup. So I think you guys did that correctly. We probably got that one wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then tables, we had the second table choice because you guys won the roll-off. Yes. So we had two choices in a row. So we played on table 5. And then you guys played on table 3.
Yep. That's right. If we take these off, so 2, 3, 4, and 5 are now gone from the table preferences. So we're down to 1, 6, 7, 8. Honestly, we did not look at table preferences all that much. There were a few times where I stepped in and said, look, you guys look, player, which one do you want? And if they wanted one that everyone else wanted, I'd be like, look, can you take this other one that you also like and help a bunch of people? But I did that very infrequently. A lot of tables was pretty autopilot for us. Like, just take the table you want. Like, go, don't lose, go win. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but we probably underthought about tables this event.
I don't know if it's wrong. I mean, the level you have to that the table does so much effect is pretty high. Like,
yeah,
you need your line of sight, you need your cover, but some tables the difference is minimal, and if your army has not measured its movement or what it can do specifically to this map, I do not think it's such a big difference one table to another when there's the same density of cover on it or terrain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll get to it when we'll be talking about my thoughts during pairings, but we took more thought into table choices.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that, actually, because I think that is an area of weakness in my pairings logic that I would like to get better at, I think. So that's, excited to hear that part of it. Cool. So now I got to do third defender. This is where things get crazy. And this is a rough place for us to be, honestly. At this point, Poland's guard is looking very good. We have a lot of losses into their guard matchup. We don't have a lot of good lists into that. Throughout this entire event, we did not have a great answer into guard. And I think that was one of the biggest weaknesses of our roster, was that like we didn't have a great answer into a faction that everybody
I think no one had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like the
Because there's
Shizink
just
Demons
none.
list, but that's like it, basically. Iron Hands kill guard fairly well, but like that's it.
Not if the guard plays as well, from my experience. But I've never seen somebody screen themselves with mortars turn 1 and turn 2. So
yeah, that's a Chad move right there. Screen with mortars, because
Yeah.
you know they don't matter in that matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're scared of the guard right now. This is terrifying. We've got a bunch of losses for Death Guard. Luckily, we still have our demons in hand. Maybe our one saving grace. We think demons has a lot of opportunity here to help us out in case the rest of the pairings go wrong. But we do have to pick a defender. Now, what's the most compelling one to me here is Chaos Knights. We have a really big loss in the guard, draws into their Chaos Knights and demons, and a win into GSC. Basic pairings theory says pick a defender who only has one bad matchup. The only other player we're really keen to do this with is demons. They have a loss in the guard, but we believe wins into everything else, which means if we put up demons as a defender, they're going to do well. But it also means we lose the option for demons to clean up something crazy that happens with refused attackers and champions later. So we kind of want to hold on to our demons to not get us killed later on. So we pick Chaos Knights for our third defender, expecting them to throw guard at us and something else. And we will deal with it, basically. And then the wily Poles send guard at us, which of course is the one matchup we were trying to avoid with Chaos Knights, which we would have avoided by default. So it's how it goes sometimes. It's hard to predict.
Last
and
fours
maybe you don't want to
tend
pick
to be
anyway.
random.
Yeah. So we put up our Chaos Knights. They put up their guard. Cool. So what do we like in the guard? Nothing. We like nothing into their guard. So what we'll do is we're going to try to avoid demons and avoid demons because that's the one bad matchup for them. They're great to everyone else, so it can't be demons. Well, if it can't be demons, your decision's made. We're protecting our demons. The Chaos Knights are off the table. We're sending World Eaters and Death Guard. It's literally the only thing you can do if you want to protect that one thing. And the Chaos Knights, they send their Chaos Knights and demons. At this point, there's not much left to really do. Automatically, our demons is going into their GSC as the champions. No decision needs to be made. And all we have to do is decide who we want to attack our Chaos Knights. So we have to think about two things here. One is, who do we want to play our Chaos Knights? And two, of the one we refuse, which one do we want to go play our other attacker? And this is where my brain starts to hurt oftentimes because you start running all the permutations. There are many permutations. But when we look at this grid, so our Chaos Knights is going to go into either their Chaos Knights for a draw. Mirror match, we think, is about a draw with Chaos Knights. We don't see a lot of first turn advantage. We've played that one before. Or their demons. Now, if we pick their Chaos Knight, if we pick their demons, their Chaos Knights goes back into the pool. There's a chance that their Chaos Knights goes as refused attacker. They refuse the World Eaters because they take the shot against Death Guard. And now our World Eaters are playing their Chaos Knights, so the two refused attackers. That sucks. Our World Eaters player is one of the better players in the roster. World Eaters have this cool thing they do where they just kill people sometimes to score a ton of points, then they just like run you over. So we really don't want World Eaters to fall into refused attackers against Chaos Knights. So we take the mirror. We take Chaos Knights because it's fine for us. Makes no difference for the Chaos Knight pairing in our matrix, but helps us in the refused attacker pairing, protecting the other guy. So we choose the Chaos Knights mirror. And the guard take on our World Eaters. All these things we worry about don't matter at all because the World Eaters are already off the table into their guard, which means automatically our refused Death Guard go into their demons. And that is pairings for the first one. We picked the next table. It doesn't really matter for this. We picked table 6. They picked table 7. And then we picked table 1 and table 8 to finish it out. And we have our matchups.
About
What do you guys
table
think?
not mattering, at that point, I expect you guys actually asked the others,
We did.
what tables
We
do
did.
you want?
Yeah.
Not-
Yeah. We walked over to our Chaos Knight. No, we didn't talk to our Chaos Knights player. That thing's a draw.
Yeah.
The table doesn't
Yeah.
matter because it's equal. So we talked to our Demons player, and we talked to our Death Guard player and our Demons player, and we gave the Death Guard player the best table we could get because the Demons didn't care that much. Death Guard needed it pretty bad, so we really gave it to we protected the Death Guard table by throwing whatever we wanted into the Demons, the Chaos Knights matchup, because that is a mirror that does not care about terrain. Yeah, so we did do it, but it's like not a thing I can kind of walk through on the show. It's just you go talk to the person, then pick the table. It starts to get very simple, the decision making.
Yeah, but your decision making wasn't for that particular matchup, but to make the remaining ones easier by removing something you didn't want. That's what I'm trying to get. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great example of I don't care what my Chaos Knight player wants. I care about what everyone else wants because his opinions don't matter for this pairing. He's playing the mirror. So you have to just think about other people instead. Yeah, exactly right. Cool. So that's how we paired up. So our Chaos Knights go into their Chaos Knights. I'll clean up this matrix while Typhus tells me what I got wrong, and then we can see where we're at.
I don't think it's at this point I should be talking about what's wrong. I think your approach was correct. I think like whenever I listen to your reasoning, you actually reason well. I think it always boils down to estimations, singular estimations. And for us, I'll also add that sometimes we did pairings suboptimally on purpose because certain players wanted to play certain armies.
Oh, for practice.
Yeah. So sometimes we did something off just so they can get a rep into a good player. So
for those of you at home, this is called a flex because Poland, we paired suboptimally to get reps in, also went 5-0 and won the event. So there we go.
I mean, that was our plan because we had 4 completely new, I think 4 or 3 completely new players who haven't played at those kinds of events beforehand. So we wanted to make sure that they get as much exposure because our team hasn't been chosen for like at least 1.5 months yet. So in our case, we wanted to give some of them actual chance to perform into other good players, etc. So I just want to add the caveat, but whenever something like that will happen, I will actually say that during the pairings. So you want to pull up my part of the table? No. Let's reveal the scores after I do my side. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it sounds great. Let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I will keep. Here's what we'll do. I will keep my. What did I do wrong? I will keep my my estimates for how I think that's going to go because it'll be fun to kind of see through that. Iceland estimates, Pole estimates, and we'll go that way. But otherwise, I will blank out all of this and we will replay it again. And what we're going to do is we're going to swing over to the Poland matrix. Sorry, I don't have your tables up, but we'll swing over to the Poland matrix for what they thought was going to go on.
We don't have table choices written down as needed. So for the sake of this exercise, essentially, we also had a lot more comments on our tables. Like nearly half of all the estimations had a comment, and that's something that is the difference. That when we are talking about tables, usually we use those comments as a way of indicating that a certain matchup gets better or worse depending on the table choice. So, for example, our reward eaters had way better into certain matchups as defender and way worse as attacker. And he mentioned that specifically into specific matchups. And for example, our custodes had different estimation Like when you look at our table, our custodes have a loss against Iron Hands in general, but he has written a comment that he thinks it's a draw on his table choice. And those things will come up when I do the pairings, because those are things that I base my choices on. And so about our team comp, we had few problems because we had like a set 8-man team quite early. So we wanted to also use this event as kind of test of people being able to adapt to new rules, new armies, etc., like we would have with 10th edition. But it's not really relevant because I think by the time of the event, the meta was kind of solved. So we didn't have as much of practice as we hoped for. But when it came to the team composition, few choices were quite easy. We had one guy who was playing Tau previously who wanted to play guard, so we gave him guard. We had one guy Mason, who was playing GSC, and he always plays the broken shit, so we gave him GSC again. I was the captain, and I was doing all the organizational stuff like booking our hotels, etc., and also doing pairings. So there was a conscious choice done that I will be playing the fastest army within the team to not have issues with time, with dealing with stuff, or whenever my team would call me over to their table, that I would actually have time on my clock to deal with it. So that's why I was playing knights, because it's a quick army. And then we had few players like Duda playing Eldar, because we realized Harleys are dog shit. So we dropped Harleys and gave our Harlequin player Custodes. Duda was playing Eldar, and at that point we had like few decision points about Dark Angels, Demons, and World Eaters. We are thinking about Dark Angels or Iron Hands, and we decided that Dark Angels kind of have more stable estimations and are less dependent on their table choice, whereas I think Iron Hands have more worse estimations and sometimes need table way more. So having that in mind, we chose Dark Angels, and we given them to Danny quite early so he can get his reps in. And we also, at the very end, before list submission, we're going through different ideas about team, about having Necrons, World Eaters, or Demons. And we decide that we have no answer into Guard or Votan that would defend. Like we had one answer within the team, but we needed another one. So we have chosen Zinj Demons so we can have answer into Guard. And at least pretend that we have two answers, because no one had, I think. And the other army was World Eaters, which we didn't have enough reps, but me, Myson, and our World Eater players, we are convinced this army will be really good, which it turned out to be. So even though the estimations for our World Eaters are looking kind of bad, I think this army is way better than the estimations show for one simple reason. If opponent is playing this matchup against World Eaters perfectly, those estimations can hold, but if they make one mistake, they just lose 20-0.
Yep.
One small mistake will just doom you. And so having that in mind, how we do the pairings, we identify which armies are required into each matchup that we see on the opposing team. So we identified, and I will not get into this because it will take so much time, but how I do it, I identify two, three most problematic armies in the opposing team. So in this case, for us, it was clearly Guard, Chaos Knights, and Iron Hands. And as we had those three identified, I written down in an order armies that are needed into those armies. So whenever you defend with them, we have an option to handle that. And if we hold those three armies till last 4 steps, we will always get a good matchup into your army. So doing that, we identified armies we needed into Iron Hands, Chaos Knights, and Guard. So by a process of elimination, we just knew Eldar do not really have a use in the whole pairing process. So we decided to defend with Eldar because they actually feel no niche within our team comp. So we didn't really think about what you guys would defend with. Because we had an answer into everything, at least according to our perception, where sometimes it was wrong. So we defended, as you already marked before, we defended with Eldar, you guys defended with Sisters. And by defending with Sisters, can you fill in the...
I got you.
That would
I
be
got
great. You're so lovely, man. So you defended with Sisters, and one of the obvious attackers for us was GSC, because Myson was like, that's 20. Just give it to me. That's 20.
I don't think it is, but I am still scared of him.
So, yeah, he touches people where they shouldn't be touched with his armies.
Yeah,
So,
it hurts. It hurts.
So one of them was this, and then I was looking at the table, and how I looked at it is we have only one other army who has win into Sisters but has a dogshit table otherwise, which is World Eaters.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that it's a, like, similarly to how you wanted to do with Yokul, we are like, maybe he will be scared of Myson and he will give us another good matchup. And that's what happened, because you have chosen World Eaters. And when you attacked us with Grey Knights and Renegade Knights, we knew that Chaos Knights matchup we knew very well. And to be fair, if there's one person who knows how to play it in the world, is probably Duda, because his two main armies are Craftwords and Chaos Knights. So like, he knew how to play it, but that's why he estimated this as a loss, and I was pretty confident in that estimation. So I decided to just take a win where we can find it, even though Duda estimated this as a draw. He estimated it as a draw because he haven't played it. And I knew, and I kind of expected him to be a little bit better, and his draw definitions usually are 12-8s or 13-7s. So I was completely fine with it. And I didn't want to choose Chaos Knights and have a loss at the very beginning. So, So from the very get-go, we are kind of happy, because I don't think table choice in a Sisters against World Eater matchups actually matters.
It's not much anyway.
And Grey Knights Eldar actually matters a lot. Matters, sorry.
The only thing I did, Typhus, when I picked my table was I picked one where I could shoot into the middle objective. So if you wanted to stand there, it would hurt. But yeah, that was about it.
So the tables that were chosen were, I don't know what was the reasoning. As soon as I said, Duda, we haven't even chosen putting down our cards yet, I told Duda, look for the table, and he just went off. That's something that we do. We have like me and Myson doing the pairings, and we just command players to do, because the table is holy at that point, and we just, they have their own tasks. Like they were assembling terrain, etc., and we were doing pairings. And if anyone even talked to us during the event, we told them to actually fuck off. When we do pairings, unless you're asked for it. Do not say anything.
We're a little nicer, but I don't disagree. Yokoth and I run the pairings, and everyone just lets us do it until we call them in.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to do it. And okay, moving forward. So we had our two initial matchups. And so looking at the table now, you can see that our castles have a lot of draws, but what I said at the very beginning, he had it marked that two tables that he wanted for his matchup into Iron Hands were still available. So in that case, we were like, okay, cool. He is our best choice to defend by far, because he is not required into anything but very much after what you guys played already. So we'll just grab castles as a defender and pray that you attack with Iron Hands, because we actually wanted to get that army out. and
then we gave it to you.
and you guys defended with
Guard at that time.
guard, and into guard we had two dedicated armies that were supposed to play it. One was demons, the other was dark angels. Funnily enough,
Yep.
I will not spoil the score. After this game, our dark angel player completely changed this estimation for the remainder of the event, which wasn't pleasant because we based our whole team component, so that's always great.
We gotcha on one of them.
Yeah, so we attack guard with our dark angels and demons. Demons were designed specifically to play that matchup, and dark angels were just supposed to stand there because they don't do much more. And
I'm curious what you think about this, Typhus, because I'm starting to doubt this. Like, do you send a defender up who only has one bad matchup? Because if both of you agree what the bad matchup is, you're actually handing the other team a chance to dump off whatever they want into your defender. Because like you guys knew I was taking not GSC, so you could kind of pick whatever you wanted to go up into sisters. Is that a bad idea? Kind of, maybe.
I think I don't think it is. First of all, at one point we'll see how our estimations vary by a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not that we are right. Our estimations are also wrong.
Yeah.
And this is something that will always happen no matter how good a team you are facing on or how good of a team you are. Yeah. So I think there are points where actually defending with something that allows your opponent to drop a bad matchup is a problem. But as long as you are also getting rid of an army that has bad matchups, that's fine. Because it's like a net equal. Like you are not gaining anything, but you are like both teams are kind of fine with it. The problem is if you are defending with something that has decent matchups. So let's say that there was an army that had 6 wins and 2 draws, then you're just wasting that army.
Yes, exactly. Okay, fair enough.
So I think in our case, like Custodes here is completely fine because if you attack it with something that you don't want to have, like say Death Guard, we'll just take the our approach was that if you attack with guard and Death Guard, he will take guard.
Yeah.
He was supposed to get under the bus, and as the guy was completely fine with it, like he was like, just give me the table, I'll do it, boys. For the Emperor. And so I don't think that's necessarily a bad choice. Usually it's just something that isn't completely obvious. Moving on, you guys chosen our Dark Angels. We have chosen Iron Hands. And it's worth noting that on our table, we had that one estimated as red, but in our comments, we had the estimations of Custodes into Iron Hands as a draw on their table. So looking at the table, it would have changed in this one specific.
I will change it to a draw then, because that better reflects your estimate for that particular matchup.
Yeah. So as you can see already we are somewhere wrong on both sides, and we'll just learn as we go. So now is the part where the pairings go to shit. Like usually it's rough, and in our case,
it's the fun part. It's the most fun part. Yeah.
I hate it because it's random. Because depending if your opponent has similar intel, it can go completely different.
And you have to realize that, like at the beginning when I started to do the pairings,
you never do.
Yeah.
You never do. So
but,
at this point,
it's actually random because nothing. There's no big brain move there because everyone has different informations
and you'll always have, because you are bound to play test certain matchup into a player of lesser skills, so you have false information. And in our case, when we look at the table at this point, it was either we need to make sure that Myson doesn't get Chaos Knights. That was our idea. But at the same time, our guard also doesn't want demons, funnily enough, even though Haydar thinks it's a loss. And our
that's
guard
interesting.
player
Both sides
played
were scared of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in our case, guard is like, and out of those two armies, GSC doesn't need table, guard does, which solves what we are doing at this point. From our
it
table
also helps that your
standpoint,
matrix is full of green right now. I mean, you have tons and tons of green to play with. Yeah.
Yeah. And also look at it this way. If we defend with guard, you never put Chaos Knights into it. Because that's just throwing. And if you guys defend with Chaos Knights, we never put GSC into them.
Because that's also
but
just
if
throwing
you
the
add,
game away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so GSC always dodges Chaos Knights by doing this, because if you guys defend attack with Chaos Knights, we always take it with guard, and GSC would play what the other attacker, which it's fine. So by defending guard here, we are always fine with also dodging GSC into Chaos Knights. And the remaining two armies, we didn't really care. And so
a bunch of draws and wins for you for the rest. Yeah.
So in this case, so we defended with guard, you guys defended with Chaos Knights, and then so clearly we cannot put Myson in there. Like, that's just trolling. So Myson is dropped. So we put demons and Chaos Knights.
Yeah.
There's no decision on our side, and we were surprised because we thought you guys would think that Slaanesh is favored into guard, which probably we have also wrong intel. Or so,
I mean,
who knows?
I don't know, but Haydar has played that list a ton. So when Haydar tells me, so Haydar's confident, but he's got a ton of reps. So if he tells me he likes a matchup, I'm always a little nervous, even though like a lot of the time he does run away with it. If he tells me he hates a matchup, I 100% will take that all the way to the bank and try hard not to give it to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we had one guy like that in another team as well. Anyway, so by doing this, we knew like, okay, you guys take a drawish matchup into your Chaos Knights. Cool. We don't really care about it that much. And we take into guard whichever army we, as guard, is kind of comfortable into both. If Word Eaters go first, they can get some points against guard. If they go second, they can get royally fucked.
Yep.
That's our opinion.
Yep.
So we are like, cool, Word Eaters are definitely better into whatever you would drop from our armies, which is Chaos Knights, Demons. And if you guys choose the mirror, which we expected to, if your Word Eaters would have played Demons, that's bad. But if our Demons then end up playing against Death Guard, that's really good for us because it's a really good matchup because Death Guard has no reach into that mortal spawn.
No,
so
they're like, oh, you fight fast. You're like, yeah, but also on death, so you still everything dies that we touch. It's so bad for the Death Guard. For the combat control army, they do not control the World Eaters.
No, I was meaning that your Death Guard doesn't want to play demons because they have no reach into an army that just kills them from 18 inches away.
Oh yes, absolutely right.
So by doing this, we ended up with Myson playing into Haydar at the last table.
Yep, the champions come in.
Yep. And we had Myson's estimation as a win and our Demon's estimation as a win also.
Yep, so you have a win into Demons, which, we agreed with. And then your GSC into our Demons you guys had as a win.
Yeah.
So already this is kind of fun. We agree on 4 of the 8 pairings. 3 of them are draw. 1 is a win-loss on the opposite side. We disagree on 4. You guys think your World Eaters will kill my sisters. We think our Iron Hands will kill your Custodes. You think your guard will crush our world leaders. We think it's more of a draw. And we both think we're going to win the Demons GSC match at the same time, which is really amusing to me. Yeah. That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
So
cool.
So if you input the scores, we got it was 5-15. So our world leaders or 16-4 for us.
I was going to say, yep. I'll do it my side, your side, because I'm on the left. So, yep. Sisters lose to world leaders 4-16. Fun fact:
8,
you guys
12.
were right. Yeah, you guys were right.
I think your list is way worse into world eaters than Bloody Rose would be.
Oh, Bloody Rose would have been just fine into world eaters. I've got 10 trade pieces. I'll kill your Zerks. My list has 3 Sacrosants that aren't supposed to die, so I can't trade them, or else they die.
And
it's very bad.
They die, so it's not really good. And you have no board control against that army, so you lose on primary.
It was a bad match. Yeah, I think I can do better with it. Was my first time into a world eater player of caliber. I'm sure I'll do better next time, but like I gotta push that up into more draw territory, I think.
Yeah, I think he also failed 3 charges turn 1, which is less than ideal.
Oh my God! I wanted those charges to happen. He wanted to throw 2. He wanted to throw 2 8-bound into 1 squad of 10 Sacrosants, and then I would just pick them up and shooting. I would have loved to trade 2 8-bound for 1 Sacrosant unit, but he failed all those charges, and I was like, ugh! And then I shot him. Didn't kill them all. They came in the next turn. He was upset, but I was upset too at the same time.
Interesting. Then your guard into Dark Angels. It was 15-5 for you guys.
Yeah,
as I said, our player changed his estimations after that game. Imperial Iron Hands into Custodes was 10-10.
Yeah, you guys were right on that one. Our killer did not kill
your Chaos Knights won 13-7 against my Chaos Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God I learned the army because of playing the mirror, which is great because that was my first game with it.
Ayer did great. I was so proud of him for this one. It was his first time on the national stage against like WTC caliber teams, and he goes and gets 13 in the mirror. I was so proud of him for that one. Yeah,
he played it well. And 10 World Eaters into guard. It was 8-12. So I think our
you guys, right?
won. Yeah.
Yep.
Then it was 4-16.
Yep, Death going into Demons. Yeah,
and
we agreed on that outcome.
And 8-12.
Yep. There you go. If you add that all up, you get a 90 points to Poland and 70 points to Iceland. So, honestly, from our perspective, taking a 70-90 when 75 is a draw into last year's WTC second place finishers, we were ecstatic with this outcome. I mean, we're an up-and-comers team on Team Iceland. For context, the last time we were at WTC was like 2012, 2013. Both years, they went like 0-7. Like they literally had not won a single game or gotten a single draw in the history of the country until we went 2-3-2 at the last WTC. So just having a puncher's chance into a team of this caliber, we were over the moon with this result. Quite proud of everyone. And I think your biggest loss, right, of the event? Or sorry, your closest win of the event. Said correctly. Yeah.
So it was pretty good. I think I do not have many takeaways from this pairing.
Yeah.
Like the whole pairing process, I think it went quite as expected. It truly gave us few lessons for the future rounds. And that is that we probably need to find another attacker into guard. So next round when we played Belgium, we attacked with Demons and Word Eaters, and our Word Eaters won that 17-3. I still don't know fucking how.
Wow. Did he go first? That'll help.
Yeah. But against guard on the first defender, like that's
very good.
I still don't know what happened, but it must have been brutal. And that was our main takeaway. And another takeaway was like we shouldn't ever bother Myson when he needs to finish his game in time.
I got to tell you, Adak, your Poland player, man, he taught me some things about world leaders. I think they were a great teams list because they're not going to lose that bad because they're always going to score their points as they die in objectives. And if they do win, they just win big. So they're like their matrix, like you say, types is all draws, except, oops, here's a bunch of points, boss. I did my job.
Yeah. I think there were few armies that other teams took that look decent on paper, but have the issue. And I think Sisters aren't one of it, for example, but like Leagues of Votan are. And I would never bring Leagues of Votan into 8-mans because you cannot defend with such army like Leagues of Votan because you get fucked.
Anyone fast
because demons and guard
all game long.
Demons and guard, you just die. GSC and guard, you just die. There's too many answers.
Elves,
and you cannot
just die.
And you cannot take a table, attack into an opponent that chooses the table.
Because they just use the power of walls. And what do you do?
Or measure tape. I think that's the most powerful thing into Votan, using your measure tape. I think most players do not use
can't
that.
Charge more than how many inches, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and movement and shooting as well. So there's that. And yeah, I think our main takeaway from this round was that we didn't actually have another answer for guard, and that we aren't sure if there's actually a one in a team format. And that's very annoying. Nowadays we know that desolation squads are the answer, but back then we didn't know. So yeah, I think
you like a unit that can just kill all of the Kasserkin immediately.
My main takeaway from this whole pairing is that I think you guys wasted your Sisters. And I actually mean it, because I think they were really useful in this matchup as a cog block. And you could have used it to leave it as a way to force us to never defend with guard.
Oh, because as long as Sisters are on the table, you don't want that matchup. Yeah.
Yeah, because our army that has good scores will get a draw.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good shout, actually. So interesting.
I was really happy when I saw you defended with Sisters first, because that meant that it freed up guard at like second, third defender slot.
Yeah, and they were a good defender otherwise. Interesting. Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. And
because you didn't really need the table.
ITT. Yeah,
and you do not really need the table, so why would you defend with it?
All the tables are fine for Sisters into guard. As long as I can hide something somewhere, I'm just fine.
Yeah. So I think you guys wasted your Sisters in this matchup. I would have probably defended with something else. I don't know what I would. In our case, I would probably guard, but in our case, I would, as I said, my approach is I identify which armies are the most problematic and identify which armies I need into those armies. And by process of elimination, I find out what are the potential first defenders. And
interesting.
By
and
doing
that's so different than my approach, because my approach was protect, like feed my killers fresh meat, basically, was my strategy going into this, which is very different to what you just said. Fascinating.
Yeah, our approach is cog block their killers. That's it.
Yeah.
That's our whole approach. Whenever we do pairings, we just cog block opponent's best armies. And we try to do it from the team comp level. But I don't think in this meta it's doable, because I don't think there's enough armies that can just cog block Marines and guard simultaneously. I don't think there's even more than one army that can do it. So, unfortunately,
I think there's one army that can do it.
Yeah, probably Zinj Demons.
No, you're wrong.
Anyway,
Valor's heart.
Anyway, because it's taking long.
Yeah.
it's taking long. Let's try to get into another one. Thierry, do you want to take it away on your pairing into Iceland?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start from there, and then we'll do me second this time. That sounds fun.
Yeah. If Thierry needs to bounce, we can then finish it off, Mitch.
So we took, like we said, shall I first talk about the armies we took, like Mitch did before?
Yeah, rock and roll.
Yeah. So obviously we went for GSC, Dark Angels, and Guard. The Tau is the odd one out, so straight away we should have brought a voter, but he couldn't make it, and so we had to take the Tau because we have a limited amount of players, and he could make the event. Sorry. And we decided for 2 nights because we thought it would be a good idea, but it screwed with our matrix afterwards. So we did get some good matchups, but when the list was revealed, we realized that it also puts us in a situation where we cannot get a good matchup. Like, this is not against you. It worked against you, but we played our first match against the Netherlands, and I did that pairing several times. And even if I would have placed air defenders, it didn't work. And that's because of the 2 nights. So we went through it and we fixed defenders. So we realized quite fast that we had to put Guard first and then Tau second, because most of the players had more than one army that could eat our knights. So we cannot place the knights in defenders because they will just put 2 down and go like, damn. So we had to keep the knights as a tag team most of the time, because there were several armies out there where you could just like, here, there you go, 2 knights, and it's annoying, both of them. And we could play with that. And like that, often they would take the Imperial Knight, and then we'll have the Chaos Knight as a champion, which kind of helped us. Like, not the champion, but we would have him at the end of the pairing and then help us in that situation. The Orcs just scores. And yeah, the Custodes was less good as we expected it to be for us. But the point still came.
I think that's the main takeaway from all the teams. I think Custodes aren't that good. And I think they performed well on the international scene just because people didn't know how to play into them.
We were happy to see them across the table every single time. We had so many answers to them. It was just like easy mode.
Yeah, that's what we realized when we were at the event. So yeah, let's go to the pairings.
All right.
So like I said,
your defender.
The first for us was our Guard. We just dropped it because that's what we in our head, or more me in my head, and just having it discussed with the other pairings guy who couldn't make the event. We'll go with Guard first.
Yep, love it. And you see our sisters. This was actually the only other game that I did sisters as first defender, I believe. I didn't do it every time, even though I did it every time on this show. But yep, you see our sisters come up.
And we put into your sisters
Custodes and Orcs.
Oh yeah, wrong line. Yeah, Custodes and Orcs. We did this because most of the other matchups for those guys were not the best. The Custodes was for us decent into Chaos Knights and into Grey Knights, but he alone was it, and we could get a draw, and we knew that the sisters would be dangerous here and that we need a decent amount of attack. The shooting wouldn't work because of if you're in cover and you reduce your armor, So that's why we choose Custodians and Orcs, and we choose Orcs because in our head, the Orcs would have the initiative because you would have to break the transports, and it's Orcs. It can sometimes they just survive those transports.
And then we throw Grey Knights and World Eaters at you at the same time.
Yeah. So in that situation, we took quite fast. We took the Grey Knights, I think. If I'm not completely
You
mistaken.
did indeed. You took that real fast.
Yeah, because
I remember
the guard player was not comfortable playing World Eaters. And we also rated it as a bad matchup, I think.
Yep. So you like your guard matchup into our Grey Knights. You have that as a win for you guys.
Yeah.
And our sisters, you took, we chose Orcs. Thank you very much. And that's the first round.
All right, perfect. We also didn't really, like, there is where our inexperience comes in. So that was the thought behind it, but the thought just stopped there when it comes to Custodians and Orcs into your sisters, because we're like, oh, we don't know what we're doing here. And it seems that there is some logic behind it, and we're like, okay, let's just see what he takes, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. It's a weird list that no one really knew much of what to do with the event. Of course, that is a short-term advantage, which goes away when people know what you're up to. But it was nice. Typhus knows what we were up to.
Yep.
I knew about the sacristans and the armor. I'll call it a glitch, where if you're in cover and AP2 is still a 2-up safe. So that's we avoided some stuff.
Cool.
So our
talk to your second defender.
Our next second defender was Tau.
Yep.
And yours.
We sent out demons this time.
Yeah. So into your demons, we put our Chaos Knight and our Custody.
Yep. And we sent World Eaters and Iron Hands into your Tau.
Right. And for the Tau, that was quite fast too, because what we had left, World Eaters should have been in a good matchup for what we had left. Didn't turn out that much. So we wanted to get rid of Iron Hands, and in our the Tau player had a lot of bad matchups still left. Compared to, like, the Iron Hands gave us trouble. So since the Tau would be harder to pair in our minds, we took Iron Hands for Tau, basically giving you the 20-0, but making the other matches better.
Yeah. Fair enough. And we chose to take your Custodies.
And this is a prime example of we have no idea what the demons did. Because our Custodies players like, yeah, it's demons, it's close combat, they'll come to me, I'll do something. And he came back to me as like, no, I did nothing.
We were okay with that matchup.
There's so many. Yeah.
It's like 80 Daemonettes in that list.
Yeah,
it's special.
Yeah, I'm tough, but he had the Brazilian attack. So.
Yeah. Cool.
So and then
4 down.
Yeah, and then we came to our third defender, which we played. No, I'll let you finish that.
Keep going.
We took GSC as a third defender because what we had left were Iron Hands. Our Dark Angels, our Marines, our Knights, and you could counter them really easily if we would play them as defenders. So we choose GSC because I have the experience with the GSC, and never, never, ever do pairings and play GSC. I lost my match against you because of that. My head was just dead. So
I'm
I
with
thought
you. I'm with you.
taking some bad matchups out to get a better matrix. That's why we went with GSC, because most of the other armies could have been just outpaired because you could play two defenders that would ruin us.
hmm
So you played.
I'm with you, by the way. All my games went to time. I play very like cagey. It's a hard list to play, my sacrosanct list, and then I'm dead. And then I'm like, oh God, get the laptop. It's time to go again. Jokic's like, come on, buddy. We got 30 minutes between rounds. I felt you.
I had a player who's like, go put my army in the tray. Just put it in the tray. But how? It says this. No, just put it in the tray. I have to go pairing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Cool. And we threw up Chaos Knights as our third defender.
So we went against your Chaos Knights. We went Dark Angels and our Imperial Knights, I think.
That's correct. Yep.
And then you went with Astra and World Eaters.
World Eaters and Guard. Yep.
So here the GSC took the World Eaters.
That's right.
And I still think that was the right choice, but that did not turn out that way. And then you took
Dark Angels into our Chaos Knights.
Because that is also the matchup we wanted to avoid. So the Renegade Knights, you do not want them into GSC.
You do not. I agree. I agree with you on that. The GSC really struggled to kill them, and they die immediately to the chain.
Yeah, those guns are just. I hate them.
So there you go. Your World Leaders into our GSC. And now some things just happen. Our Death Guard immediately go into your Chaos Knights.
Yeah.
Because those are the champions. That's just decided.
That was good for us.
Yep. A lot of things were into our poor Death Guard. But also, automatically, the refused attackers go in. So the seventh pairing becomes our Guard versus your Imperial Knights by default.
Yeah. And I took World Eaters because I thought I had a good score there. I still think I have a good score there. I just failed. But the Guards for us was a coin flip into Dark Angels. And in our mind, you would not have. We gambled there because we didn't know which one you take. If you would take Dark Angels or the Imperial Knight, because the Imperial Knight should, in theory, win against Chaos Knight. In our head.
Yeah.
So we thought we'll get maybe Guard against against Imperial Knights, and he could do something, but we're grasping at straws at that point.
Sure.
But we did realize that for us, the pairings didn't went that bad. So
yeah,
okay,
by your matrix, you have 4 wins, 2 draws, a loss, and a double loss.
Yeah, exactly.
If you naively say a double loss is a -2 and a win is a +1, you effectively at +4, -3, you're at +1 in pairings for overall, which feels drawish.
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Yeah. Typhus, you've gone quiet on us. What's going on?
I'm just thinking, looking at all of this, there's a lot of matchups that I have wildly different estimations about.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of people.
And something that I'm actually wondering, and I would love to hear your thoughts about it, Thierry. How much do you actually guys have time to prepare before such event? do you guys do a lot of preparation, like as a
No.
team, or you just wing it because you have limited player pool?
We wing it. We have limited player pool. We have a limited time. So, like the Tau player could not play a lot. He knows his army, but he could not play a lot in his meta due to life. So I just did his pairings from what I knew. And like a lot of armies, like sisters, we do not have a sisters player. So it's just basically
Yeah.
we have a World Eaters player, but that World Eaters player is also our Renegade Knight player. So he trained the Renegade Knight, but since we have limited times into doing matches, it was better for him to play the army he was actually playing at the event than to play an army for others to train against.
Yeah.
So it is a problem we have. So first of all, we are not experienced in the pairings. Second of all, we have a lot of players that are not experienced in the matchups. Most of them have been to several team tournaments, but they do, like I said, they don't find the players. TTS helps a bit of finding the players, and the scrims also help a bit, but we are limited on the amount of scrims we can do. So you get basically one scrim for each meta. So every data slate gives us one scrim. And yeah, it's a lot of problems with the experience.
Terry, I actually think you've hit the nail on the head, which is that the most important thing is not the mechanics of pairing, although I think that's more what these episodes are about, because it's certainly an interesting thing and a skill to learn. I think the more important thing is get your matrix right. And I think it's exactly it. A lot of our focus out after this event, one of our key learnings as Team Iceland is like, what can we do to make the grid more accurate so that Mitch and Jokut can go do their thing day of? Like, how can we get the reps, get the practice, get the data? Is our biggest concern at the moment.
Yeah, that's what. So basically, at the last WTC, our goal was to be less shit, mate, but to get
us too.
a structure on what we did, and we failed miserably. And I felt that at this event we did a bit more structure, because against you, our pairings weren't that bad, and we failed the draw, but not that much. We drew against another team and we won another game, and that was structured. We set out to do something, and it kind of worked the way we wanted it to work, and that helped us a lot.
Lost the thing there. Absolutely right. I agree. Felt the same way. Cool. Any last thoughts?
Your question, Typhus?
Sorry?
Did I answer your question about?
Yeah. I think that's also very important to have to people listening to be aware that you might not be bad at pairings, etc. That it's not something that might be holding you back, and that the main difference that there is between like those top teams is actually the preparation and how much time they put into it. And for example, our Chaos Demons player, when he was told that he's supposed to play Demons 2 weeks before the event, he played like 14 games in that time.
I do not think we have, like, most of our players did not play that in total.
Yeah, so that's the main difference. Like, we had players who were willing to go the extra mile to make sure that we win this event, and they were sacrificing their private time with their significant others, etc., to get that additional one rep into an army they didn't know what their estimation should be. And that's the thing that I think makes for the winners and the teams who are like in the mid of the actual tournament, like the mid spots. Is those teams at the top, they do not necessarily have to have like the best ever players, because I think the game at times is so easy. No offense to anyone, but nowadays a lot of games and matchups can get very repetitive. That's what I'm trying to say. Like there's not many factors that if you play certain matchup once and get enough takeaways from it, that sometimes playing once or twice might be sufficient for you to know how to play into that army for a very longer time if actually you are playing against a good opponent. So what I'm trying to get to is that if you have more time to get those 1-2 games into every army, usually that's sufficient to have like a good understanding of how your army performs. But the main limitation is to get those games into an opponent that will give you a worthwhile experience and make sure that you are not overestimating your games.
Yeah, that, and what I realized also is that the players have to realize they are in a team game. Because often players tend to tilt because they are started losing. And then when you not realize that you're in a team event, and I'm guilty of this too, like, oh fuck that, oh my god. And then you concentrate less because the game is lost anyway. But in the end, you realize that, oh, I could have taken 2 more points, maybe, and that would have changed the loss to a draw, possibly, or even worse, the win to a draw, or the other way around, the draw to the win.
Another learning I had is that you need to play with probability at a much different way than you do in singles. Like in singles, if you're going to win, but it's close, you lock it in. If you're up by 10 or 15, battle points, you hold the lead through the game 5 and walk away with an 85-75. And you go, whew, got it done. In teams, that doesn't mean a damn thing, right? Like winning by 10 is just as relevant as losing by like it doesn't matter. What matters is what you're supposed to deliver. And one thing I'm trying to get better at, but I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to improve at, is like, when do you push outside of your comfort zone a little bit? So like as an example, I was playing into Grey Knights game 2, and I knew the round was going to be drawish. We had a guy walking around taking notes, and we knew the round was pretty close drawish. Now I have a really good advantage into Grey Knights. I blank all of his shooting. Like I take all of his AP 1 and 2 on 2s and 3s because that's what Valorous Heart does. I can turn off his smites. I just like in singles, this is a 90+% likelihood of win. Unless dice go crazy cold on me, but like I'll win by 10 or 15 points. In teams, I knew that was going to happen, but I knew my team was close. So round 3, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I threw all my Retributor's out and I fired a bunch of Melta and I tried to like pick up 2 of his remaining 3 Nemesis Dread Knights. And then he rolled a bunch of 4s. And all of them were untouched. And then he's like, oh, those Retributors sure are out in the open. And he picked all of them up. And I was like, uh-oh. Now, I still scraped together an 11-9 win because I had such a baseline matchup advantage. But, like, it's a fun question to ask yourself. Was it correct? Probably. Did it work out? No. But was it correct to try? Probably. And I'm trying to learn, like, when do I take those calculated in-game risks that you would never do in singles? It's like a whole nother dimension of the problem.
Oh, yeah. Also, when you go to... I love that as a captain, when you go to a player, it's like, we need points, push for points. And he just looks at you, please don't.
Don't make me lose. Yeah.
And I think also this edition is not an edition that you can tell someone after like turn 2 to push for points. Usually you make your decisions at deployment steps and the reserve steps that you cannot change. And you saying push is actually not doable without taking like an absurd risk of you having like 10% success ratio, right?
Yeah.
So you need to, from the very beginning, to have good understanding if your team needs you to bring more points. And I had my players ask me that because they knew that their matchup can bring higher score or not by like 2 brackets. And I would usually say, just play your game. Like, play it safe. And I don't think usually there's much space to even try to get higher scores, except your opponent actually giving it to you. That's the only way you do it.
Yeah. I'm sure in some cases you can do it. Like I chose to go for it into Grey Knights turn 3, but I also play a very passive, slow 5-round game. I appreciate a lot of games you can't really do that, right? If it's decided by then, it's decided already. Yeah. Cool. All right, you want to try the other side of it now?
Yep.
All right, I will do
Go
try
for
to
it,
do this a little
Mitch.
bit faster because you have a lot of my theory already. So let's flip over to my matrix. I don't think it sounds like Typhus. We won't focus too much on tables. We'll focus predominantly on the matchup side of it.
Yeah, if a table is important, you can mention it, but that was
honestly,
my main.
In this round, we were 100% just handing out tables to the guy that wanted the table most of the time, and it only got interesting with the third batch of pairings with the refused attackers. So, probably an improvement in my pairings game, which I'll definitely be taking away as well. All right, so let's talk about Luxembourg from my side. Again, on their side, I see Gene Stealer Cult, I see Orcs, I see Guard, Dark Angels, Chaos Knights, Knights. The Double Knights is intriguing to me. Custodians and Tau. On our side, again, we've got Iron Hands, Demons, Chaos Knights, our own, My Sisters, woo, Guard, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Grey Knights. This matrix doesn't feel too bad when I look at it. The first thing I like to do is look at, like, who are my versatile players? Who are my killers and who are my versatile players? Iron Hands feels really good here. Iron Hands has 6 wins, 2 of which we think are big wins. That's into Chaos Knights and Knights. Draw into GSC and flippy into Orcs. Demons, again, confident in the matrix. We've got 6 wins, a loss into Guard, and a draw into Dark Angels. Feeling good about that. Guard feels good here. Again, big wins into Knights, Custodies, into Chaos Knights too, and a bunch of other wins in the matrix. The stuff to watch out for really is our Chaos Knights have a bunch of losses. We don't like them into Orcs, Guard, Dark Angels, or Knights, so our Chaos Knights we have to protect. Our Grey Knights, again, is feeling pretty rough. There's a lot of flips and losses in this pairings that I've got to be careful about. And our Death Guard, again, are giving me fits. This is also one where our World Eaters don't feel great. We have 3 losses in the Matrix because there's a lot of Knights, and World Eaters don't really kill Knights that quickly. There's just too many of them. So our World Eaters don't feel great either. So we've got some, like, underperformers in this Matrix, but also some big overperformers. So I'm going to stick to my plan of let's go have my killers get their kills, and let's try to protect against downside risk for everybody else. Cool. So I look at this matrix and I think, what do I want to do? This was one of the easier ones for us, honestly. Demons, again, lots of wins, only 1 red matchup. They're table agnostic, putting them as the first defender, loses a lot of the table picking advantage, so we're going to stay off Demons. Iron Hands is a killer. I'm going to manufacture a good win for them later. Everyone else has a bunch of losses, basically. The only real choices, again, are Sisters and Guard in this matchup. Similar thinking to last time, but even more important. Guard and Iron Hands give us pins into Knights and Chaos Knights and Custodies, where we can give them 2 very bad matchups for them. Given they're on double Knights, keeping Guards in hand will make them sweat and give us a lot of advantages. Sisters only have 1 losing matchup again into DSC. So yeah, we're going to throw down Sisters. This doesn't feel especially controversial, I don't think, unless Typhus tells me otherwise, because apparently he liked my Sisters more than I thought into Poland, which makes me happy. But we're going to put down Sisters for first defender. And again, from their side, we're going to see, let me pull it up. They're going to throw down those Guard. Those good old Guard. Okay, so I've got Guard now. As before, Guard is the one we don't like to see. We don't have a ton of good stuff into Guard. Iron Hands has a win into Guard. Everyone else is kind of a draw, with Chaos Knights, Demons, and Death Guard quite scared of Imperial Guard. So we talked this one out, and we don't decide to throw Iron Hands away, actually. I think this was our biggest mistake into Poland, was throwing away our killer maybe a little bit too early when they could get a bigger win elsewhere. We think Guard is a win, but we think it's like a 12 to 13 point win, not like a 15, 18, 20 point win that it could be elsewhere. So we're not going to throw Iron Hands in, which means we're only going to throw draw matchups into Guard because everyone else is a draw or worse. So we end up choosing to check into their Guard, Grey Knights and World Eaters. And the logic's pretty simple. Both of those have crappy matrices. So whichever one they pick, I take a lot of red off my matrix. So we take World Eaters and Grey Knights off because they both have tons of bad and flippy matchups. And I'll just be good to be rid of them. And then, as Thierry explained before, we see Custodies and Orcs going into my sisters. Let's finish this up here. I've got Custodies and Orcs. Well, I look at this matrix and I see a flood of green going into their Custodies. Sisters, I'm green in 2 Custodies, I believe, but I think it's like a 12 again, maybe a 13 if I push it. A small win. We think others can get bigger wins. So let's keep Custodies for somebody else. I'm just going to take Orcs. If you look into Orcs, we have 3 flips. Iron Hands is a double flip. Guard is a single flip. Grey Knights is a single flip. I don't want to put this round in the hands of the dice. So if I can just take a lot of flips and a potential loss off the table, we actually only like 2 of our lists into Orcs at all. This is an easy one for me. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to take Orcs off the table, go get myself a draw, and take a lot of risk out of the matrix. So this feels quite straightforward based on the matrix in front of me. And Luxembourg takes Grey Knights into their guard, which is not the first time we've sent our Grey Knights into guard this event, actually. So that happens for the second time. And that's the first set. Thoughts?
I don't like defending with guard here on the Luxembourg side.
Why?
Just looking at it, I think Iceland had a better team comp to play into guard than we did, for example. So I think keeping guard for later, for like second, third defender, is a better choice than throwing it on the first one.
Yeah, we were happy to dump our garbage into guard, like dump our draws that is garbage elsewhere and just take it out.
That's the thing that we discussed like very early on the first pairing. I think this allowed them to eliminate a lot of bad matchups from their matrix.
Yep.
And that's something that you kind of want to avoid if possible with your defenders.
And just get some concern, when I say garbage, I'm referring to the pairings grid. Our players all played their hearts out and did great. This is the soulless logic of pairings only when we talk like this.
Yeah. So I also showed it to my players. They did all well, and I'm really happy with what they did.
Yeah. Okay, we'll keep going then. Any other thoughts? All right, defender the 2. So our System Grey Knights are out. We've got to do this defender thing all over again. Well, World Eaters still have a ton of losses because there's so many knights, they can't be a defender. And again, we can go kill knights with a good pairing. Death Guard, again, have a lot of bad matchups, and we don't mind them into some things, but there's a lot of bad matchups. They'll just dunk on our Death Guard if we send them up. Our Guard is a candidate here. Lots of wins, but also some double wins. And again, if we take Guard out as a defender, we lose the really powerful Guard Iron Hands pin into both Imperial and Chaos Knights. So we don't really want to do Guard yet. We're going to keep those held back if we can, which means actually we're just looking at demons in our own Chaos Knights because, again, Iron Hands are staying back. Chaos Knights, we got a bunch of red. We don't like Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights. We don't like it into Dark Angels, and we sure as heck don't like it when Tau are floating around. So Chaos Knights feels like a bad defender. Because we want to hold on to the pin with Iron Hands Guard, we're taking demons. It's the only sane choice given that goal from my perspective. So we throw down demons. We don't often defend with demons, but this is the time when they're generally green to yellow. Matrix feels like a good place to save them because we're trying to protect other big 20-0s later. And then we see, actually, annoyingly, I keep saying we try to avoid these matchups and they keep throwing them as defenders. The Tau show up there. So maybe we didn't need to be so concerned, but the Tau show up on their side. So now they give us Tau. This feels really good for us because we have a lot of green going into Tau. So this is a chance where we're not going to play KG and go for the draw. We're going to go kill him. And so into their Tau, we send World Eaters and Iron Hands. The logic here is pretty simple. We think Iron Hands, although it's a single win in our matrix, I go talk to Yokut, who's doing pairings with me. He thinks he's got a very good advantage into this Tau matchup. So probably this is, a darker leaning green for us, like a better win. And if you look at our World Eaters, oh my God, World Eaters is draw, loss, draw, 1 win into Tau. So we're going to take their 1 green matchup and hope that they are so scared of the Iron Hands that they take our world leaders off for us again. So this feels pretty straightforward for us. We could have thrown guard or guard in here too, but again, we wanted to hold on to them for later potentially. So
Yeah,
our demons go down.
The Tau player was most of the time thrown under the bus.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think
exactly
this
what
army is
happened.
just bad.
Go ahead. Come again?
Yeah.
I think this army is just bad now.
Yeah.
nowadays.
I completely agree.
There's
Yeah.
nothing to do.
Yeah. So we throw down the demons, they throw down the Tau. We see Custodes and Chaos Knights come into our demons, and we threw out the World Leaders and the Iron Hands into their Tau. So now we get to pick between Custodes and Chaos Knights into our demons. If you look at our pairings, we like Chaos Knights into demons, but we like Custodes as well. We have a bit of a chat about it. We kind of want to keep Chaos Knights, throw it back to them to try again, because we're running out of lists, and we still have guard in hand. So we're getting increasingly likely to get that guard Knights pairing we're so desperate for. So instead, we just take the Custodes. We take it off the table. Also, Hey There tells me he really does want this matchup. Like, again, it's a single green, but it's a single green with upside rather than downside risk. So we're happy to take the Custodes at this point as well. So we take the Custodes. And the Tau decide to go under the bus of the Iron Hands, as Thierry explained previously. Thoughts on this part so far before we keep going?
I think it's good that you didn't choose Chaos Knights, because that's a loss for Slaanesh.
I didn't disagree. my player really liked it, but there's a lot of chain cannons in that list, and as even 80 Demonettes will eventually die. Yeah.
In our case, Chaos Knights were designed to kill that list as well.
Yeah, we took them because of the what is the strat? Also the mortal wound ones, which help against demons too.
Terror Shades.
Yeah.
That
was our logic behind it. The chain cannons plus the Terror Shade should do decently.
Yeah. Okay, so for our left, they still have Chaos Knights and Knights in hand. Now here it's getting a little bit dicey, because we did decide to throw away our Iron Hands in this matchup. Maybe a mistake, maybe not. We're looking at a lot of draws and losses. And into their Imperial Knights, we have a lot of red. Guard really like it, but our Chaos Knights, World Leaders, and Death Guards super don't. So let's go into Defender 3. If we look at this one, Chaos Knights have 2 losses into Dark Angels and Knights. Death Guard is a string of losses and draws. World Leaders, which again, great player. I want to protect my World Leaders a little bit because they do have big scoring potential upside. Has a bunch of losses here too. So if I want to protect my World Leaders and I want to maintain control with Guard for what they go into, like if I throw out Guard, they might just throw the Dark Angels and the GSC at me instead of the Knights and the Chaos Knights that I want. We decide to third defend with Chaos Knights. They've got one good matchup. Even if we take a loss in the Dark Angels doesn't feel that terrible. Chaos Knights is a draw. So we're not kind of expecting to see magic here, but we throw up our Chaos Knights to try to just keep the dream alive. And then we see them throw down GSC. So now we see GSC down. GSC, we've got a win with Guard, a draw with World Leaders, and a loss with Death Guard. We actually think there's a huge downside risk of throwing out Death Guard because GSC will just shoot them off the table, and it's not particularly interesting of a game. So this one doesn't feel too hard. We throw Guard and World Leaders at their GSC. Our World Leaders player has played this one a fair bit, into Yokoth even, so we kind of understand this matchup fairly well. And we know that Guard is just brutal into GSC because they can just have 12-inch no deep strike Rs, which completely shut the army down and is a stupid game mechanic. So that's kind of self-decided once we get the Chaos Knights down. We spent a while talking about Chaos Knights as a defender. I'm kind of glossing over a lot of what happens if we refuse attackers and what does the champion look like. We did a lot of thinking through all of this. There's a lot of permutations, but I think doing it now would probably just be more confusing than not. This is where we spend most of our pairings time, honestly. But Chaos Knights felt the least bad of these. Excited for Typhus to tell me I'm wrong. And so for our Chaos Knights, we see Imperial Knights and Dark Angels.
Has mixed feelings.
Yeah. He's mixed feelings.
I'm thinking
Well,
because I disagree.
you disagree with Chaos Knights. Who would you have done?
Yeah, I would have done Dev Guard.
Just to get them out of the way, take the not worst matchup?
No, to have 2 pins into GSC.
Oh, I see. Between Chaos Knights and Guard.
Because
for what it's worth,
if you defend with this way, you make sure that they do not get a good matchup on that one. And you are, if they play well with Imperial Knights, if you have 3 losses into Imperial Knights, you cannot do anything about it.
Yeah, you just take one, right? You just say, here's the Imperial Knights, they're done now.
And if they do that, you are completely fine with taking it with Dev Guard. Out of all armies, Dev Guard actually has damage to play into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Into Imperial Knights, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my reasoning.
Fair enough. Yeah. We talked about it a lot.
But it's actually like probably if you go through all the possible permutations and combinations, it might not be the best solution, but it's my first glance at it is that this way you make sure that you can get a good matchup into GSC.
Our thinking was that if we put down Chaos Knights, there was no way they would put down GSC into them. Now, of course, they defended with them, which meant that we'd have a lot of control over the Knights Chaos Knights pairings because we could control which attacker we refused. And so we were, again, still trying to angle for that good Knights matchup that we had yet to realize. So a lot of that was our thinking, was controlling the refused attacker.
I wouldn't, really with such a table, I wouldn't be controlling which matchups I lose. I would be controlling which matchups I win.
Yeah.
Because it's the last steps look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, fair enough. It's always interesting to get different perspectives on it. And I'm still learning this process too. So it's, thank you.
Me too.
Appreciate the feedback. So, our Chaos Knights, we have Imperial Knights and Dark Angels. Well, into Dark Angels, so basically, we hold to this logic. So our Chaos Knights are out. So one of our Lost into Knights is out. Into their GSC, it's Guard or World Eaters. We do a little bit of crystal balling here, and we say, I think they know and we know that Guard into GSC is a terrible, terrible, terrible matchup that just completely blanks the GSC. So I think they're going to take the World Eaters, which means Guard becomes our refused attacker. And if Guard is our refused attacker, you know what we want to have? We want to have those Imperial Knights go into the Guard. And so this is where our strategy actually, right or wrong, because there's so much uncertainty, right? Just because it worked out doesn't mean it was correct. But this is where our strategy did pay off. So we take Dark Angels, knowing we're not excited by it. But the reason we take it is because it kicks their Imperial Knights out to their refused attackers. Luxembourg does what we think they will. They take the World Eaters pairing for GSC, which means our Guard does land as refused attackers into Imperial Knights. And we do finally get the pairing that we've been looking for this whole time. And then the champions happen automatically. Our Death Guard goes into their Chaos Knights, which is not the worst matchup in the world, in theory. It's just a losing one. So our Chaos Knights go into the Dark Angels, which we have down as loss. Let's take that all out. Our World Eaters go into their GSC, which we have down as a draw, which is into GSC, not the end of the world. And then our Guard go into their Imperial Knights. That's the moment we go, woo! That's what we were looking for, people. And our Death Guard go into their Chaos Knights, which we actually have down as a draw. We're that confident it won't be too bad pairing. And that's our pairing. So we think we walk away with 4 draws, a loss, 2 wins, and a big win. Which if you use the basic plus-minus thing, we're at +4, -1. We're at a +3 in our pairings off of a draw. Which means we should come up with some kind of a smallish win. Maybe, probably, if people perform on estimate. And that's how we did Luxembourg. Typhus, how did we actually do?
What were the
scores?
Do the
scores? Yeah, go for it.
Actually, if I were to guess, I think Sister Orcs, I think you should be losing that as Sisters like 12-8. Just on the secondary basis.
Hold on. Fair enough. Yeah, actually, this is great. Why don't you tell me what you think it's going to be? Give me the Poland level prediction. That's a great idea, actually. So you think I lose that one 12-8 to the Orcs?
I might be completely wrong, but yeah, that would be my guess.
Thierry, it turns out, is a lovely opponent. We take that one 10-10. I
think you have slight disadvantage in how he pushes you off the table and then proceeds to score better on secondaries because of it.
And he did score a lot of primary early, but the problem is the Saracens just didn't die quickly enough, and the guns just kept doing guns things. So
yeah, and I also don't know the list, the Orcs list, so I'm just guessing in the air. Grey Knights into guard. Grey Knights into guard. I think Grey Knights, it's guard stable, right? I think Grey Knights should lose it on guard stable. If it's like first defender guard.
We take that one 11-9, actually. I think Ale knows his guard inside and out. He's actually played guard more than once in this event already, and I think he just kind of knows the matchup pretty well at this point.
And our guard player has not played against Grey Knights.
Yeah, it's the downside when you're playing the big meta buster in teams is everyone's got reps into you. No one's got reps into the thing that's not the top 5, or at least not so many reps.
The games I'm actually interested about the scores are both Chaos Knight games. So if we could go through...
We'll do Demons Custodes next. So our Demons do 20-0 the Custodes matchup. Hader was right about that one. Our Iron Hands into Tau. Pull that one up. Where are Yokut? Is a 19-1. Yokut goes and gets his kill like I wanted to. Our Chaos Knights into Dark Angels. That's the one you care about the most, right? So our Chaos Knights lost 4-16 to the Dark Angels. Unfortunately, that did not work.
Yeah,
we had that as a loss, but that was quite the loss. That was a bigger loss than we were kind of hoping for. By our matrix, a loss, we want you to walk away with at least 5 points. Like our target is 5 to 9. 4 is just outside of a loss. That's into big loss territory. So how that goes. Our World Eaters into your GSC. Let's pull that one up. Actually, we took a 20-0 on that one. Michael just went off. I don't know how that match played out. Yes, I do.
I will talk about it. I will talk about it afterwards. Just finish.
Yeah, fair enough. No, Michael did talk about that. Our guard into Imperial Knights. We win that one 14-6, which is the very bottom end of a big win for us. Technically a big win. But I think your Imperial Knights play that probably pretty well. And then our Death Guard into Chaos Knights. Sadly, we take the 0-20 there. Just can't handle the pressure and the pain and the guns and the saws and whatever the whips and chains they have. So that's how that one goes.
If you played very well, you can go for 7 points as Death Guard, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so Iceland wins that one 98-62. So not that far off a draw, honestly. And that's how it went.
So I learned an important lesson and something that I think is important for other people to know even when you started. So basically, I played a GSC, so that 20-0 is entirely my fault. I played the matchup before, not that many times, but I knew what the Eaters were doing. Your guy, Michael, I think.
Michael, Michael Cooper.
Perfect. Yeah, he played it perfectly. And basically what happens, it's very easy. I deep struck on one side and deep struck I made a decision to put it back and go without to put it into 7 inches so that if he would roll for blood surge, he would not tie me up. And then on the other side of the board, I rammed my bikes into his face of 10 berserks. And then when I got into my shooting, I started to do my rotation to get the crossfires up. Killed one berserker, and he charged me. And the game was over that moment. I forgot, between 2 minutes, I forgot the blood surge. I did not know what I did there. It's fatigue. and a huge mistake on my part. And if we would have counted my game a 15-5, which I have done before against World Eaters, maybe I wouldn't have done it against Michael, but because he really knew the army. But normally that should be a win for me. We could have drawed you, and I did the pairings. I took a good pairing, which I failed, and I felt so incredibly bad afterwards because I did a mistake because I was tired. I knew this. I did it on one side and forgot completely about it on the other side. And that's the pairings I did, plus playing GSC. And he just ripped me to shreds. Completely, there was no point in going on because he was in my deployment zone because of that on turn 1, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something you need to realize, that at some point you will do a mistake and you will cost your team a result. And that is not a good feeling.
It's weird, right? Like you feel so much deeper about your mistakes. Like the things you're like, well, I'll get them next time. Even little stuff like into the Orcs matchup, I vividly remember this. My opponent dumped 20 boys on his objective. He was in the WAS. They had a 5-up invulnerable save. They weren't going to go anywhere. And I looked down, and my Dogmata, who's my only source of OBSEC other than my Helverins, is 8 inches away from my Sacrosants, and her OBSEC R is 6 inches. And I look down and think, oh no, I'm not going to take this objective unless I high roll the hell out of him. And, 3 orcs are left. He's got OBSEC. I don't. If my Dogmata is 2 inches over, he scores 8 less points, and I score 4 more points on primary. So, that was a 12-point primary swing from 2 inches of movement. Dude, straight up sloppy play. It wasn't like she was over here, not there. Straight up just sloppy play. Didn't see that was going to come next turn. And it's amazing how these one little mistakes could swing a match quite a fair bit. I mean, that's a 12-8. That's quite a different outcome than a 10-10 in teams. So, yeah, it can
there's
be tough.
a reason
to have the feels.
Why historically we as a team, if we have a playing captain, we try to give them the army that has the least decision points.
Yeah.
Not even
Absolutely.
the army that's the easiest to play, but the least decision.
I think it's very smart. Really smart. My army is very mentally draining.
Yeah,
and by the end, I was making mistakes. I was just making mistakes.
Yeah. And then, like you said before, the World Eaters have the possibility to... Sorry? Just go blow out the score, where you go he did a mistake, and they can profit so well of it, and then score so many points. And that's what happened against me. There was no coming back from that. No way.
Michael said the same thing in his recap when he was describing. He was like, yeah, guy shot and killed a berserker, and then I killed 500 points for the blood surge. That was basically the game. I was like, youch. Yeah. That big berserker unit is scary.
I had the movement. There was no reason for me to be there.
Yeah.
Didn't pay attention.
That's how it goes.
Lost the game. Not a small loss, just obliterated.
And that's the problem with playing armies like GSC. But yeah.
At least here, at least in this grid, we have more agreement. We agree on 1, 2, 3, 4 pairings. And the ones we disagree on, we only disagree by 1 shade. Like one thought it was a win, one thought it was a draw, or vice versa. So actually, although our grids were quite different, the grids we actually landed on were actually not that far apart, which is interesting. I think scores aside, we had more agreement in the matrix for what was actually paired than we did into Poland, where they were a little bit more.
And it's also interesting when you look at the results. Your results were way closer to 20 O's or high scores, whereas the matchup we played against you guys were much tighter.
Closer.
There was the biggest score was 15-5.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. Cool. Any last takeaways, Typhus?
Uh, I don't know. Play more teams if you can. Just
Fun.
play more teams, because if a meta is as bad as nowadays, probably with guard and all kinds of marines,
Yeah.
only 2 out of 8 players will have to play against that, and
And they can
the
possibly even tack against it
yeah. And
if you do your pairings.
if the worse the meta is, the more centered around 1 or 2 armies, the better teams are, in my opinion. And I think if can, escape the hellish hellhole that we have of desolation squads and just play teams, boys, if you can. But other than that, I hope that whoever is listening to this will learn something. I hope you guys learned something, and it was a pleasure to play against you and use our
Same.
great pairing cards so you can
Yeah, it
enjoy
was
them
brilliant.
later
It
as
took
well.
me completely off guard. But like also to add, like,
I'm holding the alcohol for people who are listening. You really should be watching though for this content. But if you're just listening, I'm holding the booze that I didn't win, but I stole it anyway.
also from my part, like, we're not the best team, and if you're looking for the scores that the WTC has published about how well the teams did, we're the last at the moment. But it's still awesomely fun. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing being there, talking to the other people, having these games, being in an environment that is possibly the best to play 40k in those teams, because you have people to support you, you have people to, like, the team helped me get over the fuck up I did. The team came there together, we discussed, we laughed, we were annoyed, but that's the positive aspect of it. You work it as a team, and really, even if you're like starting like we do, just go there, just do it, just play the games, try the pairings. I remember when we did the first pairings, that was in the last ETC, we had no idea, no clue. Still have had the hell of a time.
100%. 100%. It's a blast. Absolute blast. And then you can still Typhus liquor.
I mean, that's a bonus. Cool. Thank you guys for joining in. And if you guys want to do your plugs, as usual, Mitch, maybe third time for you.
I played Sis at this event. If you're like, what do you mean Valor's Heart Sacrosanct? You're supposed to play Bloody Rose. Not anymore, people. And you can find out more on my show, Sister 40K, where I talk about just sisters. And the very next episode to be released will be on this list, talked about extensively. So if you're more interested, you know where to go. Just Google for it or on your favorite podcast app, Sister Act 40K. You needed 40K, you'll get a bunch of Whoopi Goldberg content. But apart from that, be awesome if you give the show a listen. Yeah.
And you, Thierry?
I'd like to plug the event we'll have going on. And I talked to both of you about the event already. So I talked about my the captain of Team Luxembourg. And we might be the first 10th edition tournament that will happen, because we decided that we go for the Chaos variant. So if the rules release before the tournament, we'll just accept that it will be Chaos, and then do on the 1st of July, on the weekend of the 1st of July, a 64-man event singles here. But we want to try singles out because the venue should be perfect for teams. And yeah, we might play 10th. And
if you send it to me, I can put it in the description.
I'll send you the link, and then you can put it in the description.
Amazing.
It will probably be Chaos, but it will be pretty awesome if 10th.
I think first week after new edition is usually fun.
Yeah,
nothing is solved.
Nothing
as
makes any
in
sense,
every sport or esport, it's always fun. Cool.
Yeah, no.
Thank you very much for joining me
you.
in, guys. I'm supposed to do some plugs, but it's almost 1 a.m. my time, so I do not even have brain capacity to do plugs.
Yeah, me too.
So if you guys are looking, I mean, by guys, listeners, for more team content and also moving forward, probably even more explanation of those singular matchups and pairings as I go to more team events and grab more people who attended those events. Please feel free to join our Stat Check Patreon and also listen to our other shows. And I don't have more brain capacity for other plugs, as I said. So have a good night, boys.
Good night. Pleasure as
Bye
always.
bye.